After 20 years of marriage, I thought I knew him every laugh, every silence, every promise. But how do you see the knife in someone's hand when you're too busy loving them? My name is Eleanor Harper, though everyone calls me Ellie. And at 58, I stood in the ashes of a life I'd built with my own heart, watching the man I trusted most tear it apart. This is the story of how his betrayal shattered me, and how my quiet exit left him haunted by a guilt he'll never escape.
Subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from, because this story is about to take you on an emotional journey you won't soon forget.
It was the morning of our 20th anniversary, a milestone I'd been planning for months. The air in our cozy Chicago suburb home smelled of fresh coffee and the lavender candles I'd lit to set the mood. I'd woken at dawn, my hands trembling with excitement, as I arranged the dining table with the crystal glasses we'd gotten as wedding gifts. The tablecloth was the same one we'd used at our reception, a little frayed, but heavy with memories. I could still hear our laughter from that day, the way Tom had whispered, "You're my forever Ellie," as we danced under the stars. I'd spent weeks preparing for this day. I'd saved up for a weekend getaway to Lake Michigan, a place we'd always dreamed of revisiting. The reservation was tucked in an envelope sealed with a heart sticker, waiting for him at his place setting. I'd even bought a new dress, navy blue, his favorite color, hoping he'd notice the way it hugged my curves still there, despite the years and the weight of raising our son Ben. I wanted him to see me, really see me the way he used to when we were young and the world felt like ours. The house was quiet, too quiet, as I adjusted the roses in the centerpiece. Ben, now 25, had moved out to start his own life, and it was just Tom and me. I'd always thought that was enough. I'd poured everything into our family, every late-night shift at the hospital where I worked as a nurse, every birthday cake I baked, every tear I wiped away when Tom lost his job a decade ago. I'd carried us through believing love was enough to weather anything. That morning, I stood in the kitchen stirring the pancake batter, imagining his face when he saw the surprise. I could picture his blue eyes lighting up, the crinkles at the corners deepening as he smiled. I wanted to feel his arms around me, to hear him say he was proud of us, of me. The clock ticked past 8, then 9. Tom was late coming down, but I didn't worry. He'd been working long hours at the accounting firm, and I figured he was just sleeping in. I hummed our wedding song, "Can't Help Falling in Love," as I flipped the pancakes, the sizzle filling the silence. Then I heard a faint buzz from his phone, left on the counter. I wasn't one to snoop. Trust was the foundation of our marriage. But something about that buzz, sharp and insistent, pulled me closer. The screen lit up with a text, and before I could stop myself, my eyes caught the words, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. Don't tell her yet." Her. My breath caught a cold weight settling in my chest. The phone buzzed again, another message. "You deserve better than this, Tom. Leave her." The room spun. The spatula slipped from my hand, clattering against the skillet. 20 years of shared dreams, of folding his laundry, of kissing him goodnight, flashed before me, and all I could see was that word, her. Who was she? How long had this been going on? My heart pounded, but I didn't cry. Not yet. I stood frozen, staring at the phone as the pancakes burned, the acrid smell mixing with the lavender in a sickening haze. I don't know how long I stood there, but the sound of Tom's footsteps on the stairs snapped me back. He walked into the kitchen, his hair still mussed from sleep, and smiled like nothing was wrong. "Morning, Ellie," he said, reaching for the coffee pot. His voice was so normal, so painfully familiar, that for a moment I wondered if I'd imagined it. But the phone sat there, a silent witness to the truth I wasn't ready to face. That was the moment my world began to crack. And though I didn't know it yet, it was also the moment I began to plan my escape, not with words or tears, but with a silence that would echo louder than any scream. I stood in the kitchen, the burned pancakes forgotten, as Tom poured his coffee like it was any other morning. His casual morning Ellie hung in the air, a mockery of the life I thought we had. The phone on the counter glowed with those damning words, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. Don't tell her yet." My hands shook not with anger, not yet, but with a grief so deep it felt like my bones were crumbling. 20 years of marriage and I was her, the obstacle to be discarded. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but something held me back. Maybe it was the weight of all those years, or maybe it was the fear that the truth would hurt even more. Tom sat at the table, oblivious, sipping his coffee and flipping through the newspaper. The crystal glasses I'd set out for our anniversary sparkled in the morning light, mocking my efforts. I forced myself to move, to act normal, though every step felt like wading through quicksand. "Pancakes are ready," I said, my voice thinner than I intended. He glanced up, his blue eyes meeting mine for a fleeting moment, and I searched them for guilt, for anything. But there was nothing, just the same tired affection he'd worn for years. How had I missed this? How had I let myself become invisible? I slid the plate in front of him, the pancakes charred at the edges, and sat across the table. My hands clutched the envelope with the Lake Michigan getaway, the heart sticker curling at the corner. I'd planned to give it to him with a smile, to watch his face light up. Now it felt like a relic from a life that no longer existed. "Big day today," I said, testing the waters, my voice barely steady. 20 years, Tom. Can you believe it?" He looked up his fork, pausing midair. "Yeah, time flies," he said, his tone flat, like he was commenting on the weather. Then he smiled, a quick, practiced grin that didn't reach his eyes. "You went all out, didn't you, Ellie? This looks nice." He gestured vaguely at the table, and that was when I knew. He wasn't just distracted, he was somewhere else with someone else, even as he sat across from me. The rest of breakfast passed in a blur. I nodded at his small talk, my mind replaying those texts. "You deserve better than this, Tom. Leave her." Who was she? A coworker? A neighbor? My mind raced through faces, moments, late nights at the office, his sudden interest in work dinners. I thought of the times I'd stayed up waiting for him, reheating his dinner, telling myself he was just busy. Had I been blind, or had he been that good at lying? After he left for work, his kiss on my cheek cold and perfunctory. I sat alone in the silence. The lavender candles had burned low, their wax pooling like tears. I picked up his phone, my fingers hesitating. I'd never done this before, never needed to. But I typed in his passcode, our anniversary date, 042305, and the screen unlocked. My heart pounded as I opened the messages. Her name was Claire. No last name, just Claire with a heart emoji next to it. The text stretched back months, a timeline of my ignorance. "Miss you already," she'd written last week. "When are you going to tell her?" And Tom's reply. "Soon. It's complicated. Complicated." That word cut deeper than the rest. I was complicated, a problem to be solved, a knot to untie. I scrolled further, each message a fresh wound. They'd met at a conference last year, her texts flirty at first, then intimate. He'd told her things he hadn't told me in years. His fears, his dreams, his boredom. Boredom. After everything I'd given, I was boring. I dropped the phone, my breath ragged, and pressed my hands to my face. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. But they weren't just for Tom. They were for me, for the woman who'd poured her soul into a man who'd stopped seeing her. I don't know how long I sat there, but the sound of the doorbell jolted me. It was Ben, our son, stopping by unannounced. At 25, he was the spitting image of Tom, same blue eyes, same easy smile, but he had my heart, or so I'd thought. "Hey, Mom," he said, stepping inside, his voice warm but distracted. "You okay? You look off." I wiped my face, forcing a smile. "Just tired," I lied. I wanted to tell him to spill everything, but something stopped me. Ben had always been close to his dad, and I didn't know if I could bear his pity, or worse, his indifference. We sat in the living room, the anniversary decorations still out, and I tried to keep things light. "Big day today?" I said, echoing my earlier words to Tom. "Your dad and I hit 20 years. Ben nodded, but his eyes were on his phone, his fingers tapping. "That's great, Mom," he said, barely looking up. "You guys are solid. Solid." The word felt like a slap. I wanted to shake him to scream that nothing was solid anymore, but I didn't. Instead, I asked about his life, his job, his girlfriend, Emily. He answered in short bursts, his attention elsewhere, and I felt it again, that creeping sense of being invisible even to my own son. Then it happened. As Ben reached for his coffee, his phone lit up with a notification, a text from Emily. I didn't mean to look, but the words caught my eye. "Did your dad tell her yet? Claire's getting impatient?" My stomach dropped. Ben knew. My son, my baby knew about his father's affair and hadn't told me. The room tilted, the air too thick to breathe. I stared at him, waiting for him to notice, but he just grabbed his phone and stood. "Gotta run, Mom," he said, kissing my forehead. "Love you." "Love you too," I whispered, but the words tasted like ash. He left the door clicking shut, and I was alone again. Ben knew. Tom was planning to leave me, and Claire, whoever she was, had woven herself into my family, into my son's life, while I'd been decorating tables and dreaming of getaways. The betrayal wasn't just Tom's anymore. It was Ben's too. His silence, a knife as sharp as his father's lies. I walked back to the kitchen, my eyes falling on the envelope with the heart sticker. I picked it up, my fingers tracing the edges, and then I tore it in half. The sound of the paper ripping was louder than I expected, a small act of defiance in a house that suddenly felt too small. I didn't know who Claire was not yet, but I knew one thing: I wasn't the woman they thought I was. I'd spent decades building this family, sacrificing my dreams, my time, my heart, and I wasn't going to let them take it all away without a fight. But I wouldn't fight with tears or screams. I'd fight with something they didn't expect: silence, patience, and a plan. As I swept the torn envelope into the trash, I felt a spark, faint but real, deep in my chest. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something stronger, something that had been buried under dahil, tahun cinta, dan tugas. Itu adalah saya mulai bangun. The days after our 20th anniversary blurred into a haze of routine and heartbreak. I moved through our Chicago home like a ghost, dusting the shelves, washing dishes, smiling when Tom came home. But inside, I was unraveling. The torn envelope from our Lake Michigan getaway lay in the trash, a silent reminder of the life I'd lost. Every time Tom spoke about work, the weather, anything, I heard the echo of Claire's texts, "Leave her," and Ben's silence, his complicity cut even deeper. My son, the boy I'd rocked through fevers and cheered at baseball games, had chosen his father's secret over me. Yet I kept going, clinging to the rhythm of normalcy, because if I stopped, I'd have to face the truth: my family didn't need me anymore. I told myself I could fix this. I'd always fixed things: Tom's unemployment, Ben's teenage rebellion, the leaky roof we couldn't afford. So I tried harder. I cooked Tom's favorite pot roast, the kind with caramelized onions that took hours to perfect. I left notes on his briefcase, little reminders of the love we'd built. "Thinking of you," I wrote, my pen shaking. He'd smile, mumble a thanks, and head to work, or to her, I didn't know. I even called Ben, inviting him and Emily for dinner, hoping to bridge the gap. "Sounds good, Mom," he said, but his voice was distant, and he canceled at the last minute. Each effort felt like shouting into a void, and the silence that answered was louder than any rejection. But I couldn't let go. Not yet. I'd spent 20 years building this family, and I wasn't ready to admit it was gone. So I endured swallowing the pain, telling myself love could still win. I'd catch myself staring at our wedding photo on the mantel, Tom's arm around me, my veil catching the wind, and wonder where that Ellie had gone. The woman in that photo was fearless, full of dreams. Now I felt like a shadow fading into the walls of a house that no longer felt like mine. Then came Margaret. She was my oldest friend, a retired librarian who lived a few blocks away. We'd met in nursing school decades ago, bonded over late-night study sessions and bad coffee. Margaret had a way of seeing through people, her sharp eyes catching what others missed. She'd been there through everything: my mother's death, Ben's birth, Tom's job loss. When she showed up at my door one afternoon, her gray hair pulled into a messy bun and a bottle of Merlot in hand, I knew she sensed something was wrong. "You look like you've been hit by a truck," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I laughed a brittle sound and led her to the kitchen. We sat at the table, the same one I'd decorated for the anniversary now, bare except for a wilting rose. Margaret poured the wine, her gaze steady. "Spill it, Ellie. You're not fooling me." I wanted to lie to say I was just tired, but her eyes held mine and the dam broke. I told her everything: the texts, Claire, Ben's betrayal. My voice cracked as I described the anniversary, the pancakes burning the heart sticker on the envelope. Margaret listened, her face softening with every word, and when I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're worth more than this, Ellie," she said. "You always have been." Her words were a lifeline pulling me from the fog. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen. Margaret didn't offer empty platitudes. She asked questions sharp and practical. "What do you know about this, Claire? Have you checked your accounts? What's Tom hiding?" Her pragmatism woke something in me, a flicker of the Ellie who'd once balanced budgets and nursed patients through crises. I realized I'd been so busy grieving that I hadn't fought back. Not really. That night after Margaret left, I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. I wrote down everything I knew: Claire's name, the conference where she'd met Tom, Ben's text from Emily. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I thought about our finances, the savings I'd built from years of overtime at the hospital. Tom handled our accounts, always saying he was better with numbers, but Margaret's questions nagged at me. What if he was hiding more than an affair? The next day, I went to the bank. My hands sweated as I asked for a statement of our joint accounts. The teller, a young woman with kind eyes, handed me a folder. "Everything's here, Mrs. Harper," she said. I waited until I was in my car to open it, my heart pounding. The numbers didn't add up. Our savings, the nest egg I'd scrimped for, was nearly gone, drained by transfers I hadn't authorized. There were withdrawals, large ones, to an account I didn't recognize, and payments to a credit card in Tom's name alone. I stared at the pages, the ink blurring as my vision swam. He wasn't just cheating with Claire. He was stealing from me, from us. But the worst came later. Tucked in the folder was a statement for a separate account, one I'd never seen. It was in Tom's name, with a balance that made my breath catch: $150,000. Deposits stretched back years, small at first, then larger, from sources labeled consulting fees. Tom hadn't done consulting in a decade. My mind raced. Was this Claire's money? A secret he'd kept from me? Or worse, had he been siphoning our savings into this account, building a life without me? I drove home, the folder burning a hole in my purse. That night, Tom came home late. His tie loosened his face, tired but unguarded. "Long day," he said, dropping his keys on the counter. I nodded, my throat tight, and watched him head upstairs. When I heard the shower running, I went to his briefcase. My hands shook as I opened it, guilt-warring with desperation. Inside was a letter folded neatly, addressed to Tom. The return address was a law firm downtown. I tore it open, my pulse roaring in my ears. It was a draft of divorce papers. Tom's signature was already on them, dated a week ago. The terms were brutal. He wanted the house, half my pension, and no alimony. A note from the lawyer mentioned preparations for a new partnership with Claire's name in parentheses. My knees buckled. This wasn't just an affair. Tom was planning to erase me, to take everything I'd built and start over with her. And Ben, my Ben, had let me decorate tables and dream of anniversaries, while his father plotted my ruin. I sank to the floor, the letter crumpled in my hands. The house was silent, except for the distant hum of the shower. But inside me, something roared. I thought of the years I'd given, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dollar I'd saved. I thought of Margaret's words, "You're worth more than this." And I thought of the woman in the wedding photo, the one who'd believed in love, but also in herself. That was the moment I stopped enduring. I didn't cry, didn't scream. Instead, I smoothed the letter and placed it back in the briefcase. Tom thought he could take everything, but he'd forgotten who I was. I'd been a nurse, a mother, a wife, but before all that, I'd been Ellie, fierce and unbreakable. I didn't know how yet, but I would fight back. Not with anger, not with tears, but with a plan as quiet and sharp as a blade. I called Margaret the next morning. "I need your help," I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. She didn't ask questions, just said, "I'm here." We met at her house, and I showed her the bank statements, the letter. Her eyes narrowed, and she grabbed her laptop. "Let's find out who Claire is," she said. We searched online, piecing together fragments. Claire Dawson, a marketing consultant who'd spoken at Tom's conference. Her LinkedIn photo showed a woman in her 40s, polished and confident, everything I hadn't felt in years. But it was the financial trail that lit the fuse. Margaret called a friend, a retired accountant, who traced the consulting fees to a shell company linked to Claire. Tom hadn't just been unfaithful. He'd been funneling our money to her, building a future, while I planned anniversaries. The betrayal was a living thing clawing at my chest, but it also clarified everything. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage or my son's loyalty. I was fighting for me. By the end of the week, I'd contacted a lawyer, not Tom's, but one Margaret recommended, a woman known for handling messy divorces. I didn't tell Tom, didn't confront him. I moved quietly, gathering evidence, bank statements, screenshots of texts, the divorce papers. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I stopped cooking his dinners, stopped writing notes. When he noticed, he'd frown, ask if I was okay. "Just tired," I'd say, echoing the lie I'd told Ben. But I wasn't tired. I was awake, and for the first time in years, I saw clearly. The spark in my chest had grown into a flame. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing: Tom and Ben had underestimated me. They thought I'd crumble, that I'd let them rewrite my story. But I was done being invisible. I was Ellie Harper, and I was ready to take back what was mine. The flame in my chest had grown into a wildfire, steady and unyielding. For weeks, I'd moved in silence, gathering evidence, planning with Margaret, meeting my lawyer in secret. Tom thought he held all the cards: his affair with Claire, his secret account, those divorce papers hidden in his briefcase. He thought I was the same Ellie who'd cooked his dinners and smiled through his lies. But he was wrong. I wasn't that woman anymore. I was done waiting for him to see me. It was time to show him who I was. The moment came on a crisp October evening, the Chicago air sharp with the promise of winter. Tom was at another late meeting, and the house was mine, quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd planned our 20th anniversary, now covered with papers, bank statements, screenshots of Claire's texts, the divorce papers I'd found. My lawyer, Diane, had been clear: Tom's financial maneuvers gave me leverage, but I had to act fast. I'd spent days preparing, my hands steady, as I signed documents, transferred funds, and made calls. Tonight was the culmination, the moment I'd take back what was mine. I started with the house. It was in both our names, but Tom's divorce papers demanded it for himself, claiming I couldn't afford to keep it. He didn't know about the account I'd kept separate, a small inheritance from my mother I'd never touched. I'd always planned to use it for Ben's future, a wedding, a home, but after his betrayal, that dream had faded. Now it was my lifeline. I'd met with a real estate agent, a sharp woman Margaret knew, and put the house on the market that morning. Not to sell it outright, but to transfer it into my name alone. Diane had found a loophole in our mortgage agreement, and with my inheritance, I paid off Tom's share. By noon, the deed was mine. Tom would come home to a house he no longer owned. Next was the money. Tom's secret account, the one with $150,000 in consulting fees, was his pride, his escape plan with Claire. But he'd been sloppy funneling our joint savings into it without covering his tracks. Diane worked with a forensic accountant who traced every dollar, proving the funds were marital property. I couldn't touch his account directly, not yet, but I could protect what was left of our joint savings. I'd already moved the remaining balance to a new account in my name, one Tom couldn't access. Every penny I'd earned from years of overtime at the hospital was now safe, locked away from his grasp. The final step was the divorce papers. Tom thought he'd blindside me, but I'd turned the tables. Diane drafted my own set filed that afternoon, demanding half of his secret account, my full pension, and no claim on the house. I didn't want alimony. I wanted freedom. I left a copy of the papers on the kitchen counter, right where he'd see them, with a single note in my handwriting. I know everything, Tom. It's over. No tears, no pleas. Just the truth, sharp and final. As I arranged the papers, my heart raced, but not with fear. It was exhilaration, a rush I hadn't felt in years. I was dismantling the life Tom thought he'd steal piece by piece and building something new in its place. The kitchen clock ticked past 9, and I heard his car in the driveway. My breath caught, but I stood tall, smoothing my dress, the navy one I'd bought for our anniversary, now a symbol of my defiance. The door opened, and Tom walked in, his face tired but unsuspecting. "Ellie," he called, dropping his keys. He froze when he saw the papers on the counter, his eyes narrowing as he read my note. I stepped into the kitchen, my chin high, and watched the color drain from his face. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice low, almost a growl. He held up the divorce papers, his hand trembling. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said, my voice steady. "I know about Claire, Tom. I know about the money, the account, your plans. You thought you could take everything, my home, my savings, my life. But you forgot who I am." His mouth opened, then closed like a fish gasping for air. "Ellie, you don't understand," he stammered. "This isn't what you think. Claire's just don't." I cut him off, my voice sharp enough to slice through his lies. "I've seen the texts, the bank statements, the divorce papers you signed. You were going to leave me with nothing. But I'm not nothing, Tom. Not anymore." He took a step toward me, his face twisting with anger, then desperation. "We can talk about this. You're overreacting. Let's just—" "There's nothing to talk about," I said, stepping back. "The house is mine, the savings are mine, and those papers, they're filed. You can fight it, but you'll lose. Diane's very good at her job." His eyes widened at Diane's name, realizing I hadn't just acted, I'd planned. He sank into a chair, the papers falling from his hand. "Ellie, please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you." Those words, ones I'd longed to hear, landed like ash. They were empty, a reflex to save himself. I looked at him, the man I'd loved for 20 years, and felt a strange calm. I didn't hate him, not exactly. I just didn't need him anymore. "You don't love me?" I said softly. You love the idea of me, the woman who made your life easy, but that woman's gone. I turned and walked to the door, grabbing my coat. Where are you going? He called, his voice frantic. I didn't answer. I stepped outside, the cold air biting my skin, and closed the door behind me. The click of the lock was louder than any scream, a sound that echoed with finality. I drove to Margaret's, my hands steady on the wheel, and when she opened her door, I didn't cry. I smiled, a real smile, for the first time in months. Tom's reaction came fast. By midnight, my phone buzzed with missed calls, voicemails, texts. Ellie, come back. We need to talk. This is crazy. You can't do this. Then a final one, I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Let him stew, let him feel the weight of his choices. I'd spent years carrying his burdens. Now he could carry his own. That night, sleeping on Margaret's guest bed, I felt a freedom I hadn't known in decades. It wasn't just the house or the money, it was me reclaimed. The wedding photo, the heart stickers, the dreams of Lake Michigan, they were gone, but I wasn't. I was still here, stronger than I'd ever been. Tom thought he'd broken me, but he'd only set me free. The morning after I left Tom, reeling in our kitchen, I woke in Margaret's guest room to sunlight filtering through lace curtains. The weight of 20 years still pressed on my chest, but it was lighter now, like a bruise beginning to fade. I'd done it, taken back my home, my money, my life. The divorce papers I'd filed were a line in the sand, and for the first time in decades, I stood on the side that belonged to me. But I knew Tom wouldn't let go easily. Men like him, who'd taken my loyalty for granted, didn't surrender without a fight. And Ben, my son, whose silence had cut as deep as his father's lies, would have to face me eventually. The battle wasn't over, but I was ready. Tom's first move came before breakfast. My phone, still on silent, showed a dozen new texts and voicemails. Ellie, this is insane. Let's talk. You can't just take the house, I'm sorry, okay? I messed up. His apologies were desperate, but they lacked the one thing I needed: truth. I didn't respond. Let him squirm, I thought, sipping coffee with Margaret at her cluttered dining table. She grinned when I showed her the messages. He's panicking, she said, her eyes gleaming. Good, keep him on his toes. By noon, Tom escalated. Diane, my lawyer, called to say he'd contacted his own attorney, claiming I'd stolen the house and frozen his savings. He's grasping at straws, Diane assured me. The house is legally yours, and the savings were marital property. His secret account is the problem. He can't explain those transfers without admitting fraud. She was already preparing a countersuit using the forensic accountant's report to tie Tom's consulting fees to Claire's shell company. Every dollar he'd siphoned was another nail in his case. I thanked Diane, my voice calm, but inside, I felt a quiet thrill. Tom had underestimated me, and now he was scrambling. Ben was next. He showed up at Margaret's that afternoon, unannounced, his face a mix of guilt and defiance. Mom, what's going on? He demanded, standing in the doorway. Dad's freaking out. He says you're trying to ruin him. I looked at my son, his blue eyes so like Tom's, and felt a pang. I'd loved him fiercely, carried him through every storm, but his silence about Claire had broken something between us. Still, I invited him in, gesturing to the couch. Margaret hovered in the kitchen, giving us space, but ready to step in. Ruin him, I repeated, my voice steady. Ben, your father's been planning to leave me for Claire. He's been stealing our savings, drafting divorce papers behind my back, and you knew. His face flushed, and he looked away, confirming what I'd feared. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, softer now, the mother in me still hoping for an answer that could heal us. He shifted his hands, twisting. I didn't want to hurt you, he mumbled. Dad said it was temporary, that he'd fix things. Emily thought it was better if you didn't know. Emily. Of course. His girlfriend had been part of this too, her text a careless slip that had unraveled everything. I wanted to shake him to make him see the betrayal, but I saw the boy I'd raised confused, caught between loyalties. You chose him over me? I said, not accusing, just stating the truth. That's what hurts. Ben's eyes glistened, but he didn't apologize. What do you want me to do? Dad's a mess. He's staying at a hotel saying you've lost it. I almost laughed. Lost it, I'd found it myself, my strength, my worth. I want you to be honest, I said. With me, with yourself, but I can't make you. I'm done fixing things for everyone else. He left soon after his shoulders slumped, promising to talk later. I didn't hold my breath. Ben had to find his own way now, just as I had. But his visit clarified something. I wasn't just fighting Tom. I was fighting the version of me they all expected, selfless, forgiving, invisible. That Ellie was gone, and I wasn't going back. I spent the next days solidifying my position. Diane filed a restraining order to keep Tom from the house, citing his erratic behavior and the financial fraud. The judge approved it, and by week's end, Tom was barred from our property. I changed the locks, the sound of the new deadbolt clicking into place, a small victory. I also met with the real estate agent to take the house off the market. It was mine, and I wasn't letting it go. Instead, I started redecorating, painting the living room a soft sage green, a color Tom hated, but I'd always loved. Each brushstroke felt like rewriting my story. New connections began to form too. Margaret introduced me to a local women's group, a mix of divorcees, widows, and empty nesters who met weekly at a community center. At first, I hesitated sharing my pain with strangers, felt raw, but their stories mirrored mine: betrayal, loss, resilience. A woman named Ruth, a 62-year-old artist, became a fast friend. She'd left an abusive marriage a decade ago and now taught painting classes. You're not starting over, Ellie, she told me one evening, her hands flecked with paint. You're starting new. Her words stuck, a reminder that my life wasn't ending, it was evolving. Then came a surprising discovery. While sorting through old files in the attic, looking for documents Diane needed, I found a letter from my mother, written before her death. It was tucked in a box of keepsakes, her handwriting shaky, but clear. Ellie, you're stronger than you know, she'd written. Never let anyone dim your light. If you ever doubt yourself, check the safe deposit box. It's yours. A safe deposit key was taped to the letter, one I'd forgotten about. My mother had always been frugal, but I'd assumed her inheritance, the one I'd used for the house, was all she'd left. I went to the bank the next day, my heart pounding as I opened the box. Inside was a savings book, a small fortune, $200,000 deposited over years from my mother's secret investments. There was also a note, for your dreams, not theirs. I sat in the bank's quiet room, tears streaming down my face. My mother had known I'd need this, had seen the strength I'd forgotten. Tom and Ben had no idea this existed, and that made it sweeter. This money wasn't just security, it was power, a chance to build a life on my terms. Tom's final push came a week later. He sent a letter through his lawyer, offering a settlement. He'd drop his claim to the house if I gave up my share of his secret account. It was a bluff. Diane said his account was already under scrutiny, and he was trying to salvage something. I refused, instructing Diane to push harder. Let him face the consequences, I told her. I also sent a message to Ben, not expecting a reply. I love you, but I'm done waiting for you to choose me. I'm choosing myself. He didn't respond, but I felt lighter, like I'd shed another layer of their expectations. By the end of the month, I stood in my sage green living room, Ruth's laughter filling the space as we hung a painting she'd made, a vibrant abstract that felt like hope. Margaret was there too, pouring wine and teasing me about joining her book club. The women's group had invited me to speak at their next meeting to share my story. I hadn't RSVP'd yet, but the idea stirred something in me, a desire to help others find their strength just as I had. Tom's apologies had stopped, replaced by angry emails from his lawyer, but they didn't touch me. Ben remained silent, a wound that still ached, but I was learning to live with it. I wasn't the woman who'd burned pancakes on her anniversary, nor the one who'd begged for love. I was Ellie Harper, and I was enough. As I looked around my home, mine truly, mine, I knew the fight wasn't over, but I was ready for whatever came next. The Chicago winter settled in, blanketing my home in quiet snow, but inside, I was alive with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. The sage-green walls of my living room glowed under the soft light of a new lamp, a thrift store find Ruth had helped me pick out. The house, once a battlefield of Tom's lies and my silent endurance, was now a sanctuary mine in every sense. The divorce wasn't final yet, but Diane assured me it was only a matter of time. Tom's secret account had been frozen pending investigation, and his lawyer's bluster had quieted. Ben remained distant, a shadow in my heart, but I was learning to carry that ache without letting it define me. I wasn't the Ellie who'd burned pancakes on her 20th anniversary, nor the one who'd begged for love. I was someone new, someone whole. The realization didn't come all at once. It grew in small moments, painting with Ruth, laughing with Margaret, sharing stories at the women's group. One evening, as I spoke to the group about my journey, my voice steady, despite the eyes on me, I saw nods, tears, hands reaching for mine. A woman in her 50s, her face lined with her own battles, squeezed my arm afterward. "You gave me hope," she said. "That was when I understood my worth didn't depend on Tom's love or Ben's loyalty. It never had. I was enough, not because of what I'd given them, but because of who I was, fierce, flawed, and unbroken." With my mother's savings, I started a project that felt like a promise to myself. I'd always loved gardening, a passion Tom dismissed as messy. Now I turned my backyard into a community garden, a space for the women's group and neighbors to grow flowers, vegetables, or just sit in the sun. Ruth helped me design it, her artist's eye turning raised beds into a patchwork of color. Margaret donated seeds, joking about her black thumb, and the group pitched in with tools and time. Every shovel in the dirt felt like planting a piece of my soul, rooting it in something that couldn't be taken away. The garden wasn't just for me. It was for anyone who'd ever felt invisible, a place to grow again. I named it Eleanor's Haven, a nod to the woman I'd rediscovered. The first harvest, a modest yield of tomatoes and zinnias, was celebrated with a potluck in my yard. Ruth's laughter mingled with the chatter of new friends, and as I passed around plates, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. My hair was streaked with more gray, my eyes carried lines of pain, but there was a light there too, a spark that hadn't dimmed. I wasn't starting over. I was starting new, just as Ruth had said. Tom's presence faded to a legal nuisance. Diane's countersuit had exposed his fraud, and he faced penalties that would follow him for years. He'd moved in with Claire, or so Margaret heard through the grapevine, but their new partnership was crumbling under the weight of his lies. I didn't wish him ill, not really. I just didn't care anymore. His apologies, once a storm of texts, had stopped entirely. The silence was a gift, letting me focus on what mattered me: my home, my garden, my people. Ben was harder. I'd sent him that message, "I'm choosing myself," and heard nothing back. The mother in me wanted to reach out to fix us, but I knew he had to come to me. One snowy afternoon, a letter arrived, his handwriting shaky on the envelope. "Mom? I'm sorry," it began. "I was wrong to keep Dad's secret. I thought I was protecting you, but I hurt you. I don't know how to make it right, but I want to try." He didn't ask for forgiveness, just time. I read it twice, tears falling, and tucked it away. I wasn't ready to reply, but the ache softened, a sign that healing was possible, even if it was slow. That night, I stood in my garden, the snow dusting the sleeping beds like a promise of spring. The stars were sharp above, and I thought of my mother's note. For your dreams, not theirs. She'd known I'd need to find myself again, and she'd given me the tools to do it. I wasn't the woman in the wedding photo anymore, nor the one who'd crumbled under betrayal. I was Ellie Harper, 58 years old, with dirt under my nails and a heart that beat for me. I'd built a life, not the one I'd planned, but one that was mine, vibrant and full. To anyone listening, let this be your truth. It's never too late to choose yourself. Betrayal can break you, but it can also show you who you are. I lost a marriage, a version of my son, a dream of forever, but I gained me. And that's worth more than any house, any savings, any love that demands you shrink. Live for you because you are enough. Always. I turned back to the house, the glow of the lamp spilling onto the snow. Tomorrow I'd plant more seeds, laugh with Ruth, maybe write to Ben. But tonight, I stood still, breathing in the cold, clean air. The world was wide, and I was free. Standing in my garden snow, falling like a quiet promise, I realized something: my story isn't just mine. It's yours too, every one of you who's faced betrayal, fought for yourself, and found strength in the ashes. I'm Ellie Harper, and I'm here because I chose me. Now I want to hear from you. What battles have you fought to reclaim your light? What moment made you say, I'm enough? Share your story in the comments below because your voice matters. Every word you write is a seed planting hope for someone else. Join me, Ruth Margaret, and the women of Eleanor's Haven in building a community where no one feels invisible. You're not alone, and it's never too late to start new. Let's grow together. Tell me, what's your story?
Subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from, because this story is about to take you on an emotional journey you won't soon forget.